Next is keynote speech from our distinguished rector. Kepada Bapak Profesor, Insinyur Abdul SPT, MSc, PhD, IPU, dipersilahkan.
Okay, thank for all the Honorable Dean of Faculty FISIP, the Honorable Speakers, Prof. John Kisman, the Honorable Dr. Taufan Teguh Akbari, the Honorable Moderators, okay. The problem. Okay. The Honorable, mohon maaf, the Honorable of participant at this seminar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
The first, let us give thanks to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for the abundance of grace so that we can participate in the second international webinar of Communication and Public Administration 2022. The topic, a global outlook, empowering digital media and young participants in the public policy. Ladies and gentlemen, we know in this world there is an element of good and evil hidden in everything. Now it depends on the ability of beyond and legitimate purpose that benefit the whole of humanity. The same is true of the use of social media. Social media is invention that has both advantage and drawback like double-edged sword. Now it is up to the user to decide how they would benefit from it. If we manage to use the media properly and correctly, then we will get a lot of benefit. On the contrary, if we use it wrong, it will have a bad impact on us. We hope that with this seminar, we will have many references in choosing and determining the use of media that useful for you all. Thank you very much for your participation in the seminar. Thank you for all. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Professor, for inspirational speech. Now we move the presentation. Ronggo?
Allow me to introduce the first speaker for the day. This is my distinguished professor. I'm also taught by him. And the first professor is John Gershman from New York University. So before we get to the speeches or presentation by Professor John Gershman, Professor John Gershman is a clinical professor of public service and director of international specialization at NYU Wagner, and also director of International Capstone program. And more importantly, he is an executive committee at New York Southeast Asian Network that are devoted to putting Southeast Asia into the global conversation and inspiring next generation scholars. So Professor Gershman, I would say, professionally and personally also invested in the well-being of the Southeast Asian Asia. So his research, writing, and advocacy work has focused so much on issues like democracy, food security, and U.S. foreign policy in East and Southeast Asia, and also the politics of international and financial institutions and multilateralism, and also the political economy of natural resource management in Ghana and the Philippines, and the rights-based approach to development. He was my professor in Intro to Public Policy classes and my current professor in Politics of International Development. He also taught several other courses, among others is Institution, Governance, and International Development. So John Gershman, I would like to personally say thank you to you for making the time at 11. Oh no, it's 10 p.m. in Eastern Standard Time. I know how late it is because I'm in the same time zone with you. So welcome, Professor John Gershman. I would like to say a few words.
Yes, thank you so much, Rongos. Assalamu alaikum to all of the participants, and thank you all for joining. I'm looking forward very much to the discussion from my presentation. I will not focus very much on specifically on the social media side or digital communications. I will talk about it occasionally. I believe someone else is going to talk in more detail about that. I'm going to speak a little bit more specifically about issues relating to youth participation and public policy, kind of in a global context. And I hope that people would feel free to, ask questions at either at the end of my presentation or during the presentation. And I'll just start off with just some opening remarks, which is, I am clearly not a member of the youth participation generation. And as someone who has two daughters who are part of your generation, one of my observations would be, and I think this is an observation about Generation Z or whatever we would like to call all of you, is that I think many of you have been, if just speaking about your generation and the world as a whole, is that your generation has been too polite. That the nature of the challenges and obstacles that my generation, I'm on the cusp of the boomer generation and Generation X, the challenges and obstacles that would lead to your generation are significant and large, and there would be any number of good reasons for all of you to be incredibly angry about that. And I would love to see that anger channeled into robust forms of social movements, of advocacy, of youth political engagement to address those issues even now, before the older generations move out of the way and you are able to actually be in charge of policymaking. And I think it's an important question to ask, why kind of the younger generation has not been more forceful in demanding accountability of older generations in Indonesia, in the United States, everywhere. Okay, so a quick overview. I'm going to talk a little bit about the global demographic and political context, a little bit about organizational forms of youth participation and policy strategy, and throughout I'll mention some examples from other countries. I don't live in Indonesia. All of you know much more about Indonesia than I do. Nevertheless, there have been some very important examples of organizations and initiatives within Indonesia that I think demonstrate the possibility of Indonesia becoming an important leader in this space of expanding youth participation in policymaking. And because Indonesia is well known as a society that's very active with digital communications on a range of platforms, to really some innovations in using social media as a tool for advancing and promoting youth participation in policymaking. Okay, so some global demographic and political context. So here is a representation of the world population from 1950 to the present. And basically each color represents a different decade of population up until 2018, which is the period for which we have data, actual data. And then the others are kind of projecting out till 2100. And what I think this is simply here to highlight, and then of course men are on the numbers of men are on the left, women on the right. And this is the distribution of ages. And you can see, particularly as it would compare 2100 to 1950, that an increasing percentage of the population is going to become older. We live in an aging world, which is at one level a sign of success. Life expectancy is longer. People are not dying as early. But we are at a moment, if you look at the 2018 data, where kind of the youth, and we have to recognize that not every country uses the same definition of what constitutes the youth. One definition is roughly 15 to 35. Other definitions are 15 to 24. But that the median age in 1950 of the world was 23 and a half years, basically. So 50% of the world was younger than 23. 50% of the world was older than 23. In 2018, that was 30. So 50% of the world is below 30. 50% of the world is above 30. And by 2100, our best estimate that the median age will be 41. So basically 50% of the world is younger than 30. And that is, and for the first time, actually, we have a majority of people who were over 65 than are under 5. So globally, the world is aging, but there is this world population is growing. There is this very large population of youth, and our political institutions, again, in the United States, Indonesia, elsewhere, have not changed to reflect that large group of young people participating in policymaking and in political institutions. And my computer is deciding to act up. Half of the world's population lives in